So I want to do a little prequel as to what this series is going to be about. It's really going to be about participating in changing our world through our responsibility as business owners. And I'm going to be doing episodes with both Kevin and Mikey, who's on the show today, throughout the duration of the series. Today's episode is going to be about inspiring you, the audience, with the power that ownership has on our world. It's something I'm really, really passionate about. Since we're all business owners here or aspiring business owners, I want to help you see farther than you originally thought by challenging you to think about how you see your role as an owner. We're then going to backtrack in our next episodes with creating the skills to make ourselves ready to become really a world class business owner would be the goal. And I hope we can all share in this journey together because I'm on the journey. I'm not saying I'm a world class business owner, but and then we're gonna after that we're gonna build on what we do with our ownership as we become more successful and more responsible with the burden and the blessing of being a business owner. My inspiration for this series is built on how Megan and I bought back our time in our early 30s and we pretty much had full control over our days. Like that book by Dan Martell, that was us. But something was really missing in our lives. We didn't feel like we had or we were having as big of an impact as we could. And so our goals really started shifting over the past few years from having complete control over our days to really helping others have complete control over their days so that we could share in the fun of all being co-creators together and so that we could have more impact directly inside of our towns. Because, if you're listening and you're in, I don't know, Richmond, Virginia, I can't really affect change in your town, but you can if you buy back your time and you're able to think about how to solve the problems in that town. So, in a sense, I really hope to help to create a bunch of little circles in towns all over the country and expand those circles outward from people buying back their time. I mean, that's really what we're aiming to do. We want to see changes in little towns and cities all over the country, and see those circles expand outward as you buy your time back. So, for us to take on this next venture, this required us giving up our comfortable living that we had, and we went all back in on our next venture, Lawn Care Launch, which is specifically aimed at helping you buy back your time through what we've learned in bookkeeping and bringing in some other knowledge from Kevin Salters and Stephanie in the marketing and in the coaching department that Kevin's absolutely killing right now. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the aim of Lawn Care Launch before we start the series to tell you a little bit of our vision and our passion. We definitely didn't do it for money. I mean, money's nice, but it just gives us the ability to have more tools at our disposal to be able to help more people. That's how I think about it. So I'm going to go through 10 steps and then we'll get into our conversation with Mikey, who I've really been having a great time talking to as we work out together every once in a while. So number one, our aim at Lawn Care Launch is to help families buy back their time and invest in their local communities. Number two, we wanted to have our kids watch and build with us from the ground up, which I think is the best education you can give them. Number three, we wanted to have an asset that changes lives and that can be passed down to future generations. Number four, we wanted to provide for our friends and families, that might be stuck at their job. I'm hearing them talk about something they wish they could change. I want to have a business that I can invite them into, have a spot for them. So provide unique opportunities to be invited into something bigger than themselves. Five, force us to not get comfortable and change into the builders and leaders that we desire to be. Number six, help others be all that they can be by helping them build confidence, cast out doubt through building foundational elements of ownership, and then pushing them to the limit of their abilities. Number seven, work hand in hand with our resources in order to affect maximum change in our lives and other people's lives. Eight, to fill a gap in our society. Instead of chasing materialism, we want to chase fulfillment and purpose in our work by building a business that represents what you stand for. Number nine, we want to create the most and consume very little. 10, bring out our highest ability as humans, co creators, and to show others what humans are capable of for the glory of God. So you kind of get into like humans versus AI. Is AI better than humans? What's the purpose of humans? You kind of get into those philosophical discussions. So anyway, that's our 10 steps. Mikey, what's up, man?
What's up, man? I'm excited to be on here. And I
You
guess I
haven't
did just say the exact, I said, what's up, man? We both say, what's up, man? That throws me off because, like, that's what I always do when I like see people. That's funny.
Yeah, it's cool to have you back on the show, man. Dude, your episode was one of the best episodes, which was kind of weird because you're like some of this random guy that just kind of bursts into the scenes from Equip, and
Yeah, that's
it
what
was,
Stephanie told me. I was, like, super surprised, but yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited to
yeah.
talk about some business stuff.
So we've, like I said, Pastor Mikey went to Equip with us. We had a good time. He got kind of introduced into our lawn care industry, lawn care world, and me and him's been working out together recently and having some good conversations. I was like, dude, we got to do some podcast on everything we've been talking about as it relates to not only lawn care but just like the world itself. So I invited him into doing what I'm going to call the Impact series with both him on some of the interviews and then Kevin Salters on some of the others. We're going to talk about what it means to own, what it means to create, what it means to be a visionary. So ultimately, that we can have more impact on our world through owning a business. So that's kind of the new series. It's probably going to go on for quite some time. I know our scaling series did 27 weeks. I don't know exactly how long this one's going to go on for, but dude, I'm thinking at least half a year. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear. It's always fun to kinda go back and listen to, like, the different people's perspectives all on the same kinda topic and, listen to how everybody brings their own kind of view into things is a good time, so I'm
Yeah, yeah.
excited.
So
It's gonna be interesting not having, like, all the people around us starting conversations, whatever. I mean, this is just 0 to 100, we don't get to, like, look over there and be like, why is that guy doing that?" And then that just kinda leads into,
yeah,
a
yeah,
normal business conversation. Don't know how that works,
yeah.
but it just kinda does.
Me and you've spent a lot of time talking about Christianity and how it relates to wealth, resources, and responsibilities. How much has your world view shifted over the last few years when thinking about money and tying it into that life, into your life? Because I know you've had a lot of transformation of character just watching you in the last couple of years, as you're always asking me questions about money and in stocks and investing. And I'm having a personal journey of my own, because I was deep into stocks. I did that for 17 years.
Right.
And so you're always bouncing questions off of me. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you all you want to know about stocks, but let me tell you why I don't like stocks. And so we've always been
Yeah.
balancing out kind of what's the meaning of
Yeah.
life kind of thing. Like, what's the best way we
Right.
can be responsible with our money? And I've had a great time teaching you about stocks at the same time telling you how much it sucks. So,
Right, yeah. I think my journey has changed, my view has changed over the last few years, a lot like you mentioned, going from like, I had the same you mentioned earlier, being young and just wanting a lot of money. Well, when I was in Bible school, I was like, "Okay, this isn't gonna pay me much, and I'm not doing this for that," but, like, that's not the point in obviously being a pastor, is it to make money? Or it shouldn't be, um, and that's a whole, topic in
yeah,
itself,
yeah, yeah.
but I think yeah, I viewed stocks as like this way that I could maybe have some kind of a financial gain, while using my mind, even though I had something else going on for work. I think that's originally kind of what I've thought of stocks as. And then over time, you hear things like, okay, any kind of trading is gambling. You hear that, but then at the end of the day, once you understand that buying that stock is actually buying a portion of a business, then what really makes you money is owning a business. And in the stock world, it's partial ownership. So that was kind of interesting, understanding that okay, now it's kind of a business, and then you and I have talked a lot about the different call and puts and all these different ways of trading stocks. It's very in depth. So kind of there, for me in my life, there's a little bit of a friction because I don't want my days and my weeks to be taken up by studying the market. I just don't want that. And even if that could make me a lot of money in the future. I was like, I want to pastor people, love people, like, but I want to also be wise with my money. So there's always there are so many, different things involved here, different factors. But at the end of the day, my current view of money is, we've talked about this. It's a tool. It's a resource. You need to use it in accordance with your values. And we even talked. You were telling me about when you buy a stock at a company that has the wrong kind of values, you're like voting on the way that they run the company with wrong values. And even if you made money, like you're contributing to more cannabis or whatever,
Yeah, pretty
you're
much
like,
for you.
you're helping, you're making a vote for the kind of society you want. And then you turn me on to Phil Town. And then, so
Yeah.
the current stage of my financial journey is I just want to be wise with my money and I want to do, what God wants me to. And so, um, more than just like having a budget, I'd like to grow it. I'd like to be a faithful steward, and at the end of the day, I want to give it away.
And
So
you
that's
said,
my
like,
current spot.
if you think of it as like a tool, why would you ever use that tool for something that's not really what you stand for? Like, why would you ever use that? Why would you build something that you're not in accordance with? So it's like just from the rip, there's a little bit of misalignment there. And I hate it anytime in my life I have like a misalignment in my health, in the way I'm thinking about something. I like to close things full loop and full circle. And with stocks, I could never close it because, my mentor, Phil Town, would always talk about investing in things in your value system. I'm like, all these things don't really represent my value system. But my business, it might not be exactly where I want it to be, but I can make it something that I want it to be and always fix it and fine tune it. Whereas, like, when I own Micron or Intel or whatever stock, it's like I can't do
Yep.
anything. I can go in there and vote and pretend like I'm doing my part, for the shareholder meeting. But it's like the CEO and the board, for the most part, are like running the company. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and then
well,
it's the shareholders. Yeah, it's like the CEO runs it or the owner runs it, until it goes public, and that's the shareholders that
yeah,
kind of run
exactly.
it. And yeah, super confusing. Lots of, you know, there's a lot of different factors to that small business is not that way. But
Yeah, yeah.
anyway,
And I say all this because in the business world, a lot of times you'll have many small businesses. They're either gonna work until they die. I mean, that sounds crass or whatever, but like that's the reality of a lot of small businesses. They'll just work, they are the job, and then the business has no value because they never created systems and processes inside of it. They never hired people, things like that. They'll work until they're 65, 70 years old and they're using their body on the job. And then you have the other part of them that, they don't ever really scale, but they're still responsible and they take their extra resources and they buy assets. But I'm here to say that a lot of those assets don't represent you. And I'm not saying this is a right or wrong thing. I'm saying, is that as good as you could have your impact on society when you're investing your extra resources into companies that don't really like you and that they all are about money. So you are investing in things that's like mutual funds, index funds, like any individualized stocks. They don't really represent who you are as a person. And so that was my thing there because that's what I was planning on doing. I was like, we'll have a small business. I know a lot about stocks. Let's take the extra cash flow, put it into stocks. This is my wheelhouse. Why would I ever go out something else? Because I didn't know anything about scaling a company. I'd been with companies that had scaled. I'd helped the finance.
mm,
I know how to read finances on scaling companies, what the good things are, the bad things are. But that was my plan, and I ran into this path where it was just like it was almost like a conviction of like I feel like such a hypocrite talking about value systems, and then I'm putting my money into all these companies that everybody's complaining about on the news constantly. Like, did you see that Google was like censoring people during COVID and all these things? Like they were not letting people talk about the vaccine and the harm, and they're like, I'm like, I can't stand this anymore. Like all these companies, at the end of the day, they're about the bottom line. When you go public, you're about the bottom line. Period. Like it's all about shareholder value, which is another way of saying a bunch of ignorant people that just care about returns. So
right.
that
Yep.
was my
Yeah,
problem
and
with
you
it.
hear I was gonna say you hear these stories about the guys who are the CEOs presenting, the information, and it's like
Yeah,
totally wrong, but they just want all the shareholders to be happy.
yeah, they're
And
just
the
spouting.
CEO signs on for 5 years because he gets a huge portion of the stock and company, and then he just goes
Yeah,
somewhere
yeah, yeah,
else, and he didn't start it, so he doesn't
yeah,
even know how they got here, and he's not trying to fix any
yeah.
problems. He's trying to pad his bonus. So there's a lot to it.
Oh yeah, believe me, I know.
Uh,
I did it a long time. I contributed to a lot, but
that's funny.
anyway, I am not casting judgment on this whatsoever. I'm talking about my personal journey, and I got to a point where I was like, "Man, I don't know where to put my money because I'm tired of putting my money in this stuff." And so I have no place for my money. We had all this extra cash flow coming in. Our business was doing really good, really profitable. We had loads of money that was coming in, and I was like, "I have nowhere to put it. Like, where do I put it?" And so that's when I like really started thinking about scaling small businesses because I was like, the only place you could put that money is in something that would represent you. And like that's when we decided to really take all those earnings and leave our comfortable lifestyle and start pouring it into the next venture, which is lawn care launch, of which it was terrifying. You're having to like depend on all these different people and trust people and it's not a guarantee. Like in stocks, I can guarantee that I'm going to make. I know enough to like know the risk and not diversification. I don't diversify, but I can understand risk and things like that. So I'm
Right.
pretty aware on things that are going to happen. But in small business, I was like, this sounds good, but
Right.
so really had to double down on like confidence and education and things like that, and um, just to have the confidence to be able to pour into the business like that. So um, okay, so what have you learned about business and wealth creation over the last couple of years? I know it's kind of a little bit we covered already, but just to tie into the previous question.
Yeah, I think the one of the biggest things was, like equity in the business and like profit. And that was something that you guys, when Stephanie was doing the marketing for your other business and we were talking about starting this new one, it was just I didn't really understand much more than just the paycheck. I really didn't. But the more I've kind of been around and listened to you guys talk, the more that has kind of stuck out to me about how the money is not just this thing you put in your pocket you spend on yourself. In a business, the money, the capital is the fuel that allows the business to go. Like it's not. I guess for a long time I thought of money as just something that you spend on yourself, and I think that understanding this the last couple of years I've started to just understand a little bit more how the money isn't just to be spent on yourself. If it's in a small business, it's the jet fuel. It kind of helps you scale. And so you have to be wise with it. But yeah, so I would say that's probably the biggest difference that I've understood recently is just how it works in the business versus just in your personal life. And I heard stuff before like you're, you think you know a lot about how big numbers are in personal finance, but like business is a whole different thing. And so I mean, I had heard stuff before, but growing up, I mean, my dad he's a retired Master Chief, so my whole life I was in the Navy, and you know, talking about money wasn't really something that we did. So like when Stephanie and I got married really young, and she was 19, I was 21, so we got married really young and had to now understand this whole concept of managing your household and yeah, so the personal versus the business side has definitely been something I've learned more about recently. So
When
it's
we
been a fun
invited
journey.
when we invited Stephanie into lawn care lunch or into our business like a couple of years ago when she was working for landscape and bookkeeper, um, I was just amazed how much of a crap she gave because I never, I've worked with a lot of people, but she was always trying to add value to our company, and I thought that was really cool. And I was like, she's trying to add value to it, and she's not even an owner. And you don't meet very many people like that, where because normally value creation happens in tandem with ownership. Like that's just something that I
Mm,
think all business owners know. And that's when I knew I really wanted to like have her work with us was when she was creating value for our company. I thought that was really cool. And I knew you guys had your own path you were going on. And I told Megan, I was like, they're always asking us about money and stuff like that. And I was like, if we can get them to understand company valuations and equity and forget the propaganda of making a big salary when you're young, because even small business owners think like that. How much does a salary can make? How much can a salary ever make? If you don't understand what I'm talking about, you want your salary to basically just I mean, if you're trying to grow wealth, you want your salary to grow to cover your living expenses, maybe have a little extra, and you want the rest of that to be returned back into whatever organization that you're building. So that would be the capital gains or the equity that you're talking about. And so anytime you invite somebody into a company, it's like, how much am I going to make? How much I going to make? So it was like
yeah,
we started a new venture. I'm like, well, in the beginning, you won't make anything because we have no revenue coming into this new venture.
and
But if you
that's
get a
scary too.
what you want, assuming that your living expenses are covered. And so getting that
Yeah,
across to you guys, y'all had to think on that for a while. I was like, if they get it,
yeah,
they'll be all in if they can just understand that concept because it's powerful.
yeah. And but that's I mean, think about that's pretty. I mean, you guys have already grown one business to where that's providing for your lifestyle. It's scary, being early on and I'm still doing school that cost me a lot of money. Like I did the numbers on our personal finances last year, and like my school cost me the same amount as my rent cost me, so like it's expensive. So like jumping into this journey was you know but that's part of it, right? You take the risk, and there's obviously a potential reward for the risk. But yeah, it is scary, man. Like we were talking about, man, like, so we're gonna start working. She's gonna start working, and then we're just living off of what I'm making. I'm still paying for school. It's like, oh boy. And so
Yeah.
we had lots of late night conversations, hours and
I
hours,
bet.
and like, you're like, Michael, just listen to me, and I'm like, okay, okay, I'm kind of listening. you know. But the biggest thing is values. I think that goes back to Stephanie when she was telling me about her different clients and stuff, and just as a Christian, she wanted to add value to other people, and that's
Mhm.
just kind of cool. That obviously, God designed this world and how it works, and if you operate inside it that way, you're gonna have a really good go at it. She wasn't, yeah, like you said, she wasn't an owner, but she just, she wanted to add value to people and encourage people, and it's just kind of cool how the morals tie into all that.
Oh
So
yeah, I think that's the linchpin to like doing business together, and I think it's also the linchpin of community building, which both you and I are very passionate about. I've done a lot of
yeah,
things for that the last 2 years on community and business and value systems and like what makes things stick together. because me and Stephanie and Megan did an episode on this a while back, but it was like, what's the difference of a community and like a network? We all feel like we live in a network. It's almost like you don't even talk to your neighbors anymore. It's almost like a giant social media that you live within, and everybody in your city is just kind of like this
Yeah.
random. Everybody's working towards something different. There's no, because if I define a community, it's like, or a business, it's a group of people moving towards a common goal. Like, and you can't say that in your
Right.
city or social media or any of these things. And so it makes it more of like a network. And so trying to figure out how to build a real community of like value systems, people working towards together on the same thing. And this kind of leads me to my next question. So one of my favorite things, this is like what really sold me on like you guys family, what you stand for and everything. You said that the deeper you get into your PhD, the denominations start to disappear and you realize that the church is all about loving God and loving people. So I thought that was amazing. Like that's the central premise of Christianity basically is loving other people. And
Right.
so my question for you is building off of that topic. I've been doing a lot of thinking on this topic as well because I'd really like for our organization to build, you know how when you build an organization, eventually it gets so big that it loses its identity and it becomes like an institution. Like what
Right.
causes that? At what point does that happen? Should you stop growing before you get to that point? It's almost like a church, right? Like you have that small country church and it turns to like a mega church. At what point does that happen? And is that inevitable? Is does all businesses move towards that? And how do you prevent it? At what stage can you prevent it? Does it happen at 5 million? Does it happen at 1 billion? Like where's I think
Yeah.
of this all the time. Like, how do you prevent that? And so, my question for you is, what do you think would be the central premise of the perfect business? Because also another reason me and you think in ideals, and I know we'll never hit that ideal by ourselves. So, like,
Right.
what would that ideal business? What would be the central premise of it?
I think operating within values and never breaking those values. I think like at least on the church side of things, you can get to and I say this not having grown a church by myself, but I work at a church that's it's about 3,000 people that are involved in this church. It's a multi-site. There's a lot going on. And I think that in church ministry you can kind of, and we've run into this before too, like at what point do you set, like it becomes a temptation if size is the end goal. It can become a temptation to sacrifice values to get to that end goal. So I think like operating within moral values, or for a business, setting values that you're going to operate within. We've talked about, buying back time so that our families can and really just give away things to other people. That's really what it's about. But I think values is would be the central premise to a perfect business, because as soon as you start breaking the values, anything goes. And then if your values, if your moral values are, if that is the chief priority, then scaling and size isn't. And I think healthy things grow. So if you have a business that is healthy, it's going to grow. If you just do good work, you're going to get recommended word of mouth. Um, Stephanie was telling me, she tells me about how everybody's all about like certain different marketing tactics. But at the end of the day, you have to do good work and you have to take good care of your clients. And if you do that, it grows. Like you can always, but everyone's always, and like different kinds of ads obviously are part of it, but not trying to take the shortcut, but that's a value,
Yeah,
like if you're trying to get rich quick, that is going to show up in every single thing you do.
yeah,
And even as a pastor, I see this a little bit because, in ministry, like in the green industry, there's like the popular people and the people that everybody knows. But like even as a pastor, you go to these conferences or whatever, you could see people, everybody knows them, but if you're just having a conversation with this person to get to the next person, like one of your values is clearly not the individual and caring about that person in the moment. And we joked about that so much at different conferences. Like, oh yeah, like I was just on the list of this guy to get to the next person, And
yeah,
so it's like you're sacrificing a value right there, and
bro.
it
Yeah,
doesn't matter how good your Facebook ads are. Like nobody like that. It's a problem, So I think the values is you know I think the values is the most important thing.
I
And then
think you're.
obviously you set those values. So
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot too, and I agree with you. So I think every business operates within some sort of modem of value. Maybe your value is making money. Like who sets the ideal value? What is the ideal value? And that would be
yeah.
the ideal value, if you found it, would make the ideal business, assuming that everyone within it operates within that framework. So the question is, what is the ideal value? Because, I've said for the longest time, our business is about serving people.
Mm.
But you could also say Amazon does that. You hear Jeff Bezos talking about our number one priority is the customer, serving other customers. Even that breaks down. Amazon's not the perfect business. I mean, that's obvious. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't even think I used to say serving others, and so I'm going to say even that breaks down to a certain extent. So
Do you think do you
okay, so
think the serving others could just be a
here's the thing, though. Here's
go ahead.
Okay, so what is the central premise? Okay, if the church is the perfect organization ever created, like, would you agree with that? Like, it's or the perfect community ever created. Like, it
Yeah,
operates within what should be the perfect framework. If we're thinking of the Bible as the ideal and like what Jesus set up.
yeah.
Um,
Outside of sin nature that taints it. Yes.
yes,
Yeah, right.
because you told me this. You're trying to move within what's the ideal nature of the church, and the church should represent, what they were trying to set up originally. So, what would
Right.
if you could sum up, if the church is the greatest community ever created, and we're also thinking of a business as a community, what would be what would we be trying to imitate in order to make, I don't want to say the perfect business, but we should at least be trying to shoot for the perfect business. What is it that makes the church the perfect community?
Well, obviously God designed it and founded it. And then the New Testament speaks of the church as Christ's bride. So I don't know that I don't I mean, do you think there's a parallel to that in business?
Oh, I've
Like
been
with
thinking about this all month. Yeah. I
You're like, I'm asking this question, but I I have a month-long trail of
Well,
thinking
I'm gonna
along
see
this
if
question.
I can lead you there because it's right in our faces, I think, and you can push back on this. But I'm
Yeah,
gonna say I'm gonna say that the church is built upon the value system of love. Like, I think that's what it is. And we lose track of that. The people within the congregation it might get a little bit watered down into just serving or something like that. But I think the
right.
central premise of it is loving others as you love yourself. And that's what you tied into what you've learned in your PhD studies, right? So if we could create an organization with that built in mind, then it would never get to the point where it becomes one of these organizational slot pieces eventually, where assuming that everyone does truly care. And that's what's helped the church last for 2,000 years, right? Like, I think that's the central premise. And that's what's really powerful when you bring somebody else in that's never been to a church and like, wow, I've never felt something like that before. I think
Yeah,
that is. And so, like, why wouldn't you try to create your business with that in mind instead of customer service or like, that's all well and good, but I think those degrade at a certain point. And that's what we're feeling with all these corporations in the country because all these were set up with like the owner's value system in mind or whatever framework that they're trying to operate within. But I can't really think of an organization that's built on, as cheesy as it sounds, love other than the
yeah,
church. And the church is amazing. It's got its flaws, but the people really
right.
care about each other and they even give of their time inside of there for free. They'll come in and like talk and do fellowship and do free work inside of it and everything. What if you created the business that people just volunteered because they believed in it so much to come help people that started in the business, maybe the ones that have been inside of a business created like that that's been like that for 10 years. They want to help the ones that are new into the program. And they just volunteer their
Yeah,
time. They believe it in so much. Like, that's how the church is almost an organization of like voluntary labor. It has like no labor costs really. I mean, there's parts of it that does, because I think it's an imperfect system, but I
right.
think the premise is like self-sacrifice and love. So I was like, what
Yeah.
if you could create an organization with that in mind? Would it degrade into um, this corporate slop that everything entropies into? It's just been where
Yeah.
my face has
Well,
been lately. I thought it'd be a fun.
yeah,
I haven't presented this to anybody yet. I've just been kind of obsessing over it, but I wanted to get your
yeah.
pushback on it because you got such a
Well,
good.
I wonder if in like in a church at some point you have to make like I don't know if you're presented with an opportunity to spend all yeah, it's just I think it's so hard to compare church to business because I believe, if the church does what it's supposed to do, it honors God in the way it operates. And the business, if the values of the owners are to honor God and to take care of other people, then, it's going to honor God as well in the way the business operates. And yeah, it's one thing that is kind of cool. I don't know if this relates or not, but Stephanie was talking the other day about she just really cares about the clients. And that was kind of cool because you don't in business necessarily always hear that, sometimes the business owners kind of in it for themselves or whatever. But she was just saying, like she was talking about one of the guys and their families and some like a vacation they took or whatever. And she was like, I was so excited because I saw that they posted this and they had a good time with as a family together. And she was like, and we kind of helped that because we help them to scale and take care of their finances so they can do that. So that was kind of, I don't know, that's obviously those are the right kind, I think the right kind of values because I think, that's like a God honoring, kind of value. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's, I don't know as much corporate business as you do. So like bringing it into like comparing like what is the ideal, sometimes it's hard for me to think because I just don't have as many years of
Ah,
experience.
yeah.
I've worked in a church for 6 years. I've gone to the same church, now for just under 10 years. So I've worked here. So I know some of the work concepts here, but overall, there's a spoken value of we're trying to honor God with what we do. And that's why we're here. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, crossing it into business. It's kind of hard for me to grasp,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
because I don't understand it that well. So
Interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm always trying to find like parallelisms in business creation, because it is a group of people moving towards a common goal, just like the kingdom of heaven. So it's like I think of Jesus setting up the perfect system. Like, why couldn't you try to imitate that in your business? Like, that's kind of how I think about it. So,
yeah,
and a lot.
I feel like you
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was just gonna say, I think a lot of times, there are elements of like how the church operates that if you just took that, if you took that system and applied it to a business, it would probably work. Like you're supposed to share the gospel, right? Like that's, I guess if you like parallel that to a business, you go out, you tell people about your business, but then you have to actually take care of the people, or they're not going to be a part of what. So I guess there would be some parallels there. I will say though, like the church, it's very efficient because part of its purpose is to give those resources away to help start other churches and to send money to the mission field and stuff like that. So,
Right, but what if
but I
all of
guess,
what if all of the equity growth of the business went back into the mission of the business? That's essentially what you're talking about. So, like, if the owners lived on like basically no hardly any salary at all, just covering living expenses or whatever, and then the rest of the business,
right.
like, the money goes back into the cause. That's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I haven't really thought about that much before.
Well,
That's pretty interesting concept.
I threw something at
Future
you.
gym conversation.
Yeah, 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 no, I don't know. I've been tying in like we talk about Bible Project. I was tying in a lot of the Bible Project as we're simultaneously growing a business and then contrasting it with like entropy in corporate structures. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe that's a little too deep, but that's kind of where my brain space is all the time because I get tired of like things entropying over time simply because they lose focus or they didn't have the right cohesion or something along
Yeah,
those. But maybe we'll do a
but
whole
everything.
parallelisms between I threw this at you at the gym. It was and this sounds really dumb, but it's the word business that hits you in the face. You're like, oh, it's business. It's all about money. It's like this, that, and the other thing. But the way Jesus set up, or he set up with his 12 disciples and like had it expand out where like in a circle in a bubble and it kept expanding out from the Middle East. A lot of that is how a business would get started. You have your sales reps, they expand out, they tell about the mission of the business. Like there's a whole lot of parallels. We could do a whole series on that because I was telling you like Jesus is the ultimate way um to like spread a message and get people to like volunteer themselves um just for the cause of the mission, like and there's a lot of parallelisms between that and a business that's really making impact and change in the world. So I don't know, maybe we could do a whole
Yeah,
series on that.
yeah, for sure. You're gonna have to let me have to think. You're gonna have to let me think about it for a month though before I can before I can come up to your month of thought on something. But
I got
yeah,
there too
I
fast.
forgive you.
That's all good. All right.
That
So
question was totally in between the script here, there was, like, question 4 that I was ready for, and and then
yeah,
this one
yeah, yeah, yeah.
this one is just, in there between somewhere. I missed it. That's
Okay.
funny.
So the church, one of the main things of it is like serving others, right? So for us business owners, do you think that we can serve more people with the proper mindset and then tying that into our company's vision? So the bigger the company gets, the more resources it has, the more it can serve more people. That line of thinking. So another
Mhm.
reason to think about scaling your company is because you believe in what it does and you can therefore serve more people.
And I think, well, and anything you do, if you do it for a while and you continue to grow, you get better at it, and then you have kind of more bandwidth that you're going to do something with that bandwidth. And from our conversations, with you guys' other business, as it as it grew, it got to the point where it gave you tons of bandwidth, and now you're like, oh, this is like a cool stage of life. But then, what do we do with this? And something I was thinking about earlier was it's always the journey that's fun. It's not like the arrival. You could say, okay, I'll be happy when this. People do it in life. They're like, I'll be happy when I have this job, or I'll be happy when I'm finally a business owner, or I'll be happy when my business gets to 500K or 100K, whatever it is. Like, you know, people as humans, we tend to just always do that, and we're never necessarily like happy in the season. So as yeah, I don't know. As a business and listening to you guys, it's just super obvious that it's the process that's exciting. And as you get better, you're going to have more bandwidth. So if you don't continue to, put yourself back in the process of growing and developing, I feel like it could get super stale. I don't know. The pastor that I work for, he's always reminding. We have a lot of people on staff, and he was telling us the other day, guys, things go forward or backwards. There's really no kind of staying the same. So it's almost like we all have to make that choice.
Yeah.
It's not about just being a big business, but do you want to grow, or do you want to just stop? Which means you're going to go backwards. When the client needs something done, if you're not in that growth mentality moving forward, it's going to be like, oh, you don't take good care of them, or as
Yeah.
good care of them, or you're like, oh, you don't really need that, and it's like the client's like, well, I want help in this area. So I don't know. It's just, I feel like if things they go forward or backwards, and it's not necessarily all about scaling, but it's important to, stay in that spot. Like you said, backing yourself into a corner. There's a certain fulfillment that comes when you get out of the corner, And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, in business, they always say if you're not growing, you're dying. So like it's kind of what you're talking about. And so in a sense, growth is scaling. I'm not saying you have to scale it fast, but I'm saying it's kind of inevitable or you're going to go backwards, like that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
my question is if growth is or not question, but my thought is if scaling and growth, regardless of the rate, if it is inevitable, otherwise you degrade, I think it's pretty pertinent to think about how something doesn't become a monster. So, what we were talking about earlier, that's why I think about it all the time because, we've started scaling our company. I don't want it to turn into corporate slop. So I'm
Right.
thinking about how does it not degrade over time? How can you pass it on without the kids running into the ground? I think about things like that quite often because I don't want to make something good that turns out bad. And
Yeah. Well, don't things always naturally move towards disorder though, right? Isn't that
well,
the
that's the
is that
argument.
one of the
Like,
laws of thermodynamics?
law of nature, but then you also put a human into the equation and it can that's why we always talk about being co-creators with Christ is you can reorganize that matter into something that's not
Yeah.
intricate all the time.
It's almost like that would have to be one of the core values of the business for it to not degrade, right? Is this constant working against because things tend to go the path of least resistance. Humans do too. So it's almost like one of the values you have to have, I guess, is as a business scales, that constant fight against going the path of least resistance or towards disorder. But then as you get bigger, that challenge is just going to go, it's just going to increase. I wonder, like, at what point in the growth of the business, yeah, at what point is so much of your attention going towards removing the disorder that you're not really doing the business anymore? Maybe that would be the point where it's like,
Well,
this
that
is
would
too
be
big. I don't know.
that would just be expanding middle management. Like you see that in the collegiate system right now. You see it in government. You have an expansion of do nothing type of like administrative task or like
Right.
um, corporate governance. Like that's kind of what you're talking about in a business sense. And yeah, how do you prevent
You
that?
said,
You have to get everybody to give a crap and to own. Like they have to both own and they have to care. And so like that's why I was saying that so the central premise should be love because if you do build the business on love, everybody gives a crap and you're not trying to gather all the wealth for yourself. And so that would be kind of the living humbly, not living lavishly, creating more, consuming less. I think if that's the central premise of the main owners, because obviously you can't have a business that's owned by the entire I mean, there are structures like that, but that's a really complicated model on how you'd have all the employees. Let's say you got 10,000 employees on a business. Like, I don't even know how that business, I don't know. Maybe that's a conversation for another time. I don't know how that would work.
Right.
But
How many, isn't there a possible, can't you get to where you have too many middle managers though in the growth process? Would you say that, because I feel like you've told me this before with middle managers, there's a like you need them, but you don't want to create something that needs too many middle managers? Or are you saying really just it's ownership that is the
I
more
think if
important
you can
thing there?
I think if you have people that are dedicated to the business, they really believe in it, they really believe it's making change, they will naturally be more caring and more creative. And therefore, if you're having everybody involved in the creative process, I don't think with that creativity, the and combined with responsibility, like giving responsibility to your employees, I think that makes your management very, very lean. And Apple was a good company like that a long time ago. Like Steve Jobs always involved everybody in decisions and creativity and things like that and putting responsibility on people. I think that's I don't think it's the perfect model, but Apple was really good at that for a long time.
So when you say ownership, you're not saying in the you're not saying as part of owning the company itself. You're saying ownership is important as part of the job. Like you're trusted with the ownership of getting the job done, and then if it doesn't, I don't know. Are you saying like when you talk about ownership, is it percentage of the business, or is it just ownership as a concept within what you're trusted to do
Well,
in the
when I was
business?
talking about ownership earlier, I was talking about, yes, having a piece of the business. Now, I think what you're talking
Piece of
about,
okay,
what me and Kevin talk about quite often is giving somebody, okay, so you have to hire right first. So hire somebody that gives a crap and then that would treat the business as their own. And then you can give them responsibility that basically can double as like ownership of that task or that job. And so you don't have to manage as much if the person cares. But that starts with the hiring process. So me and Kevin have talked about that quite a bit with like the way he ran his like division and stuff. I always liked the way he managed people because he would give them a lot of responsibility and people thrive with that. But they also have to know that they're doing good and that the company cares about them and that it's an ethical company. So there's
right.
an aspect of it too.
Yeah, I've seen the ownership, or maybe responsibility would maybe be a better word to say there, but um our the pastor that I work for encouraged everyone to take ownership, but it's that responsibility component, and it is a lot more exciting whenever, you are entrusted with that responsibility, and you can, obviously everybody, sometimes there are micromanagers or whatever, but if you're not micromanaged and you're given the responsibility, it is a pretty exciting way to work. And yeah, no, that's good stuff.
Yeah, but in an ideal sense, man, I wish that everybody could have a piece of the pie because then they all get that equity growth that we talked about earlier. But that's complicated when you start scaling that out. Now, the business that we made was a 4-part owner company, which I love that structure because then you can have owners that contribute to the creative process of each driving aspect of a business. So, Stephanie's in charge of marketing, which is a huge driver of business growth. Like Megan and I are in charge of more like the financial part. That's a big driver of making decisions and growing a company. And then Kevin's in charge of like the operational side, which is the leadership, team development. So anytime you have team development, leadership capabilities combined with like a good sales strategy and then competency in terms of like how the business is set up with the numbers and everything, like that's a success for growth. And so when we set up the business for Long Term Launch, I wanted the creative process to be in each of those departments. Like I don't, I could never be over a marketing department. Like it's just, it wouldn't go anywhere. Like,
Yeah,
so,
me neither.
okay. So, um, how do you come up with like a vision? And I think as it relates to, let's just say, um, in your own personal life. So, like your faith, like how do you have a vision for your life?
Yeah. Well, this answer may get old, but it goes back to the Bible. But I think the vision, when Steph and I talk about what we want our family to be, for example, we think through, what does God's word say about the family? What are things that are emphasized? But I wonder if, like, when it comes to vision, if you should think where where do I want to be in 10 years, build back from that. You think, what do I want my lifestyle to have been? Like if there's a guy that talks about um, going and picture you're at your own funeral. What would you want people to say about you? And I think that if you're coming up with a vision, you just begin with the end in mind. What do you want your, like for me, I'm a pastor. Do I want to be known as somebody who was like a prayer warrior? Do I want to be known as someone who was a great father? All that kind of stuff. I think you just think, okay, what is the end goal? And that's where scripture comes in, because you look at the New Testament for me and I say, okay, I want to be about this. I want to be somebody who's sober minded, who's diligent, all these things. And so the vision for our personal life and for our family would just be building back from the end result. And that's where if you're not a Christian, I don't really know where you get vision for your life from. Maybe social media or what's popular. But whenever I would assume for a business, it would probably be the same thing, right? You think, what do we want to be known as? What do we want to accomplish? How are we going to go about that? And then the question that we always talk about is scaling. At what point is too big, too much, or where do you find that balance? But yeah, I think you begin with the end in mind and then work back from that. It's kind of funny. That's the current project I'm doing with my classmates is we're building a college syllabus. And so we're beginning with what do we want the students to be able to do
Yeah.
and it's hard because it's like we're talking about 18, 19-year-old guys. And so they're not really, it's not the same as working with somebody who's got 10
Yeah.
years of experience as an adult. But you start with the end in mind and then you work back from there. Okay. If we want them to be able to share the gospel with somebody, how do we equip them with what they need to know about sin in the teaching part of the class? So yeah, I think vision is you start with the end in mind, build back from there. And, if you're really good at it, you're going to set up some kind of a checkpoint for yourself to make sure you're going towards the vision. Because if you don't have that checkpoint, you look up one day and you've been completely out of whack in one of the areas that you should be focused on. Like if your family's in shambles but your business is headed forward, it's like, are you accomplishing the goal? Because you're not necessarily having everything in line, even though your stated goal may be being accomplished. Like the vision, I don't know, is kind of misaligned because you're sacrificing family for finances. So
No, that's good. And we just did our vision day inside a boot camp that we're running right now. That's day 1 and everybody says that's their favorite. And the more I've been doing this, the more I realize basically the difference in the successful and unsuccessful businesses is that they know where they're going. And
mm,
I get all these questions about what are my KPIs? Those are key performance indicators in my business. Like so, I get all these questions about numbers and stuff. And I'm like, dude, where are you going? Like, I need
yeah,
like it's like somebody. This is what a lot of people do in business. They just start building something. They don't really know why they're doing it. They just hate their reality, and so they start it, and they're trying to get out of their job and or something like that. Nothing wrong with that, but if you do that forever without any vision, you're just going to start building a house without knowing what you're building and what it's going to look like. And then you're going to get halfway through and you're going to be like, well, tell me my metrics. What are my KPIs? I'm like, they're not that good. You never know what you were building to begin with. Whereas if you start with the end in mind and you know we're building, you're going to accomplish it and your metrics almost always look good. And so I was thinking about building the numbers. Uh, I told you about this off air, I think, beforehand, but when I set out to build this series, I wanted to build one on numbers because everybody's always going to ask me about numbers, KPIs, benchmarks, industry, the industry average or benchmarks and budget,
mhm,
things like that. And I'm like, dude, your numbers almost always look good if you know where you're headed. You get a few things right, like your pricing, get your pricing right. You get your vision in mind, at least you have your margins for being profitable. And it's hard to mess it up. It really is. Um, but I think that's the main problem with most businesses. They just don't know where they're going. And so their numbers suck. And then they're asking me about numbers. And I'm like, bro, let's reel it back in. Where are you going? What do you want your life to look like? So it's something I'm
yeah,
really
and
trying to, me and Megan and Stephanie and Kevin are really trying to harp on that when setting your business up for success. Because, yeah, I mean, if you know exactly what you're going to build, you're pretty much going to build it. Like, it's like if for example, if a cataclysm happened and you just all of a sudden had to survive, assuming there's enough resources, humans will figure out how to do it. So the end goal in mind is survival, even if you don't know what you're doing. If you get together with some people, you're probably going to live. It might not be like you're thriving or anything, but like humans can survive through some crazy stuff. And I think that when you back yourself into a corner and you know where you're headed, you're gonna get there most of the time. I'm not gonna say every time, but yeah, it's something about human nature. It's what does Jeff Goldblum say in Jurassic Park? Like life finds a way. I think it's survival instinct. So
Hey, you heard it here first. The Jurassic Park worldview training session here on the podcast. No, well, also with your vision, if you have vision, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but numbers aren't that inspiring to me. Like they're just not that exciting. Now it's something important, and numbers are a part of everything that you do in life. And I track what I do with numbers. We've talked about time blocking before. I did a couple years ago. I started, basically building a weekly template of time blocking for my week, and then that was uh, probably it's 2 years ago now, 2 years ago in a few months. And I can go back and look at what I did every hour, and I'll track my average. This is nerd, but I track my average hours for my classes so that I know how I'm going to be able to balance all the preaching and
yeah,
work and time in alignment with YouTube and in alignment with my school. So like I do track numbers. But the vision is what's exciting. I want to have like the YouTube channel that encourages people to manage their time well and work on personal and professional development as a Christian. Like that's exciting. My subscriber count to me is like, okay, man, yeah, that's cool. But it's really exciting when it's like working towards the vision. So yeah, if you don't have a vision and then you like having all these numbers and you're like wanting to know it's like, well, even if the numbers were exactly what you wanted, have you arrived? But like without the vision, what you're doing is kind of meaningless.
yeah,
So and I've heard that from a lot of people. Like numbers, they're important, yeah, but they're a means to an end. If the numbers are the end, then what are you doing? Like what are you working towards?
right, right,
So
right. And dude, like what you're talking about is like high level business management right there. Like if you talk to Kevin about how he managed 300 people, his jobs are all like time blocked. Like you have to know exactly how long everybody's taking on the job. I mean, that's what the nature of a business is like buying back your time. You're literally purchasing it basically. And so that ties into the time management. But yeah, I mean, if you get your margins correct with your pricing and then you block that time and you're figuring out how long it takes everybody to do stuff, that's basically the whole thing right there. And that, yeah, I mean, tie it into the vision. So uh, yeah, that's the most important part. So for like an athlete, let's say that they go. I remember the big name when I was in high school was Tyrone Prothro. Like he was one of the best receivers for Alabama. And he snapped his leg and his career was over. He was going to be like one of the top picks in the NFL draft. And it's like there's a lot of I don't know about him particularly, but most athletes, if that happens to them, their vision is gone instantaneously. And so they have to rebuild their life and figure out what their meaning and purpose is. And you can do the same thing in your business. Like, I mean, heck, I'm speaking from experience. Like we got to our destination and our goal of like being able to stay home with our kids and buy back our time and not have to work for the man anymore. And we're debt free and things like that. And then it's like, now what? You have to make something else. You have to keep moving the goalpost. And so at this point, my vision is, um, and I want to get it as closely aligned with like the vision of Christianity because I'm a Christian, but I want to see a bunch of people thriving and prosperous is what I want to see. So that never ends. Like I'm just going to keep doing that forever. And so it's the business expands to fill that void. I don't know where the end is. I don't think we'll ever get there. And I'm okay with that. I think that's cool. Maybe we can invite some other people to help fill that void too. But like that's what I think it's all about. And yeah, I mean, it's fun having a vision that we'll never get to. It just gives us. Hey, I'm gonna work till I'm 90 doing this, So that's what's cool
yeah,
about
that's the spiritual life too. When have you arrived as a Christian? I mean, you don't,
it. Yeah,
but that even goes back to the process. Like that's the fun part. It's not really arriving. Talk to anybody who's set a goal and achieved it. It's like, okay, you achieved the goal, and it's like, your first time achieving something, it's like, wait a second, this is supposed to feel better than it does. But it's like, yeah, I mean, it's the process is what's fun, and you're built as a human to create things. So if
yeah,
you get to the point where you've arrived, quote unquote. I even think about, they have that is it like the FIRE method or whatever? I listened to this personal finance show called The Money Guy, and they talk about retire. It's like something retire early. Basically, it's this whole group of people that are like trying to retire quickly, and I think it's not as popular now. But by putting tons of money away so they can live on the interest by the time they're, I don't know, maybe it's like in their 40s or 50 or whatever. But it's like, yeah, okay, even if you've achieved it, some of the people in on that show talk about, yeah, I mean, like it's not exciting anymore because it's
Yeah.
the process that's fun. So yeah, I could see.
Okay, I'll push
Um,
back there. The process isn't even fun. Like you're investing, and I'm speaking from experience here too. I like investing. I like analyzing businesses. I like figuring out where their holes are, what make them might suck, what makes them prosperous, all that stuff. I love researching it. But when you get the result of it, like even if you pick a good stock and you're right, and you're like 5 years out, and you're like, man, that was a great pick. So what? Like the journey's not even
mhm.
fun, like it's fun to do the research and everything, but it's still empty. And then okay, so it's a life of really not being that fulfilled. And then on top of that, because your money's not working towards your value system, I'll say that. And
Mm.
maybe your value system is making money. That might be fulfilling for you to make money in stocks like that. But for me, it's like, okay, making all this money for what? And then okay, you can retire early for what? you,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
your whole life is like, for what?
Yeah.
That's the materialistic mindset, and so I don't know.
Yeah, they talk about that too. They say they're not, and I don't remember all the acronyms and stuff, but they're not huge the guys on this that host this show, personal finance show, they're not huge fans of retiring early, but they are like if that's your goal, they're huge proponents of once you have achieved the financial like freedom or whatever, do something else. What's the next thing you're going to be doing? You know what? Because that's the like exciting part. But so yeah, I guess obviously, yeah, parts of the process wouldn't be fun, but I feel like it's the journey. To me, it's the journey that's
Well,
fun. And there's parts of that that are uncomfortable,
that's what I'm saying is when you're building towards your value system, the whole journey can be fun. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
The difference in that and putting your money into something that doesn't necessarily represent you, and then living the way that maybe you want to afterwards. That's the investor life. But the small business life is like we're trying to affect change at all hours of the day. And it's very fulfilling, even though
Yeah.
it's hard and frustrating and self-doubt. You have to build yourself um, just to be able to handle that load eventually that you're gonna weigh. And I learned a lot of those attributes in investing. Investing doesn't teach a lot of things that small business does, but investing teaches you to be calm. I'm a very calm person. I don't freak very well. Like I'm so used to like bad PR hits on companies and global catastrophes. It doesn't phase me. When COVID hit, the investor in me was like, "Oh, brother!" Like none of that ever freaked me out or anything. Just because it's just
That's
that's
funny.
every day in the stock market's like that. You read the headlines; it's always everybody's.
Right.
You have to get really patient and learn how to wait and sit there calmly as everybody's throwing shade on your companies and stuff like that. And I got really good at that. But like time management, that's something I'm having to learn. I didn't have to learn time management in investing. I just learned half of the equation, and I can put that into small business. But I'm learning so much from like Stephanie and Megan and Kevin and all these people I'm working with in terms of like the small business stuff. But a lot of it is but I can also bring a lot of things that maybe small business owners don't have, because like I feel like a lot of small business owners and like my family too, like a lot of people in 9 to 5, they freak out about everything. I don't freak out about
Yep.
nothing. It's the world of investing. Like you have to sit there and just take it day after day. Like this company is going to be delisted. This company's dead. Like this constant. So it's I don't know. There's a lot of areas in my life that I'm working on, but I am grateful for what investing has taught me for sure.
Yeah, I could definitely see that mindset is super valuable. That was kind of when I was growing up, I was like I wanted to be a pro golfer. That was like part of my story. So I was every day at the course working super hard. And one of the big concepts in, if you get really good at golf is you have to stay level headed. I that would be an interesting conversation is knowing how to stay level headed. And like you said, when the businesses are going crazy, the market's going crazy, learn how to just take that and understand, and, stay in the right frame of mind. It'd be an interesting conversation to see, like, just talk about how much does that play into being really good at anything? Is being able to weather the storm, basically get through whatever it is without losing your cool. Or in ministry, there's times where like everybody's like freaking out and they're coming to me and they're all coming to me, and I'm just like, all right, like what are we gonna do here? And you can't panic because everyone's relying on you.
Yeah,
So that
exactly.
was something I learned off a little bit, was like, hey, if you want to win tournaments and stuff, like and it gets hard because you get to the last couple of holes, be winning the tournament, and at any point, the game moves slow, so you can screw it up really easily.
Yeah.
But keeping a level head is like a super big piece of, playing well and finishing strong and stuff. I wonder how much of that, well, I know it is a big, factor in being successful at whatever you want to do, but that sounds a little similar to what you were talking about
Oh, I think
with
it's
investing.
I think it's one of the last things people get to learn in their life typically, and I got to learn it really early because in investing you start off with like basically wealth management that should be society's weird in the fact that young people can do wealth management before they're ready to do wealth management. And what I mean by that
Mm,
is you typically
yeah,
should like own companies when you're 20, but the fact that everything's public and you can buy pieces and fractional shares and stuff like that, you can do it really early. And so I think it's like I learned a lot of like final life skills from it that, 60-year-olds and stuff eventually, for historically speaking, I've learned, but I also missed a
right.
lot developmental steps in it, like the time management
Yeah,
piece. Like most people that have owned for human history, like are really good at time management. I'm having to like learn all the gaps to fill in there. And it's really like weird. But I like how it's so one thing it brings to our house is like my house is almost always calm because like I'm calm from learning all this stuff. And so it's like it is a very peaceful house. Now it's very unorganized a lot of times because I suck in organization and half the time Megan's trying to fill in the gap because she is organized. And it's like, you know,
right.
but I mean it has its pros and its cons, but I find it really upside down, really.
Yeah. No, that's pretty pretty interesting to think about. Well, when you arrive and you figure it all out, you got to let me know,
Shoot,
and
I mean, you're
I'll
along the
just
journey now. You're
I'll
part
just
of my
copy what
class.
you're doing.
You're along for the journey. We're gonna learn the same stuff at the same time, largely. So I learned a lot from you, man. That's why I had you on for time management. I'm trying to freaking figure it out.
Yeah, it's fun. I think the going back to I was thinking about this when we were talking earlier. One of the things in school I kind of learned a little bit about, you know, the journey is the enjoyable part. And I say that because so I've been, I graduated high school, then did college, and then I've just basically I've never not been in school
Yeah, because well, I
since
don't
high
think
school.
this episode, but you're going for your PhD in New Testament, correct? So just if you
That's
missed,
correct. Yep.
Mikey's a PhD student
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
yeah.
So one of the things that I've ran into is okay, this class is here's what we're going to learn, here's what we're going to study, and then you get through, you take all the tests, and if you pass them, it's like okay, so that wasn't that enjoyable. Like the completing the test, you get like a sense of satisfaction for a second, but then it's like, okay, well, what's okay, you did the whole goal. What's the bigger picture? But what was really fulfilling was having the ability to use the information that I got in one of those classes to, and I'm a youth pastor, encourage one of my students in the youth group. That was so fulfilling. So now I have all this drive to continue the education, but it's not the education that's fulfilling. It's the actual process of using the things that I'm learning to help other people. So, I mean, that has to be similar to a good business model for in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
Using it to help other people. So,
and I think you're really unique in the fact that you got to learn and you got to work and use your education simultaneously. Like most of us, for
yeah,
example,
that's true.
I did business classes, but I was like working at General Electric at the time. I had nothing to do. I didn't make any business decisions or anything, and so I was like misaligned the whole time. And I think that's
Yeah.
most college students, and it really slows down the process of learning. But that's one reason I wanted to have you on simultaneously with Kevin because you are unique in the fact that you got to work and learn in the exact same field at the exact same time. So I thought that was really cool. So basically, the series that I'm building that we're going to continue on with um, is my little 6 step outline for it. Real quick, I'll share it with you. I don't remember if I sent it to you or not, but calling it the Impact Series. Basically, it starts with skills. So you're learning skills. Think of a child; they're learning how to walk, they're learning how to talk, they're learning basic skills. After a while, you learn skills that maybe it's taught to you by an adult that inspires you or should inspire you. And then that kind of gives you your purpose. So we're going to go from skills. Let's say you start off cutting lawns. You're starting to find your purpose. You're really starting to enjoy this. You're like, hey, I can make a living to this. So you go from skills to purpose. It starts giving you ideas, which should lead to vision. I think your vision would come after that naturally, which leads to creating something. So if you have a vision and you can't accomplish it, you have to be able to gather resources, put them together, which is what a business is. You're gathering your CRM, you're gathering processes, you're gathering trucks and equipment, people, you're putting it all together in order to spit out a profit. So skills, purpose, vision, which leads to that creation of your business. And then that creation of your business will lead to ownership, and you have to learn how to own. So we'll do a whole series on all these. The next would be, how do you pass on that ownership so it doesn't degrade? So legacy. So one of the things I'm scared about, like I said, is building something that turns into something that I never intended it to be, which is
Mm.
most businesses. I'm having a hard time even finding something that's like, that's a business that stood the test of time, that is something I would like to imitate. I can't even find one, to be honest with you. If there's a business over, let's say, 60, 70, 80 years old, I'd like to hear about it. If it's something that still is carrying out its intended purpose and expanding at the same time. And I would argue the only thing like that is the church. And we can have a whole nother debate, not debate, but talk on that, because I'm excited to share some ideas with you on that. But that's why I'm kind of trying to take a lot of the church value system and plug it into like a business, because I'm like, that's the only,
'Cause it's timeless.
it is, it's timeless.
Yeah,
Like,
that makes sense.
create a timeless business. Could it exist? I don't know. Theoretically, I'd like to say that it could, because you're an idealist, I'm an idealist, but we both are realists in the fact that it's not actually the only thing
Yeah.
that is going to stand the test of time, as Christians, is the kingdom of heaven. And so,
Yep.
but we can still operate with, why wouldn't we try to operate with the wisdom of that and build it into our own lives? Like, so that's kind of where I'm coming
Yeah.
from. That's going to be our impact series. Really excited to start from square one with skills, man. We're going to bring Kevin in. I might have you in on just skill building, because I mean, building skills is all the it's all the same. It just depends
Yep.
on how you apply it. So,
Yep.
uh,
What do you
yeah,
want? Make a plan to get there. Hold yourself accountable to it. Make other people or
yeah,
have
yeah,
other people hold you accountable to it too. Get
yeah,
anything done you want to get done.
exactly. And so, skills and purpose, those are really foundational pieces of being a business owner, and that's what I would like to see inside of our lawn care launch program is, and this podcast is, I want people to be owners and to thrive, buy back their time, spend time with their family. And with that, you can become more, even, we talk about this all the time, Mikey, but like philosophical. You don't really get chance to think about things, meanings of things, how you can strategize in your community if you don't have the time for it. And so we want to buy back our
Yep.
time to owners, so that we can really affect change in our communities and make our towns the reality of the way we see them. And what better way to do it through the medium of ownership?
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm ready for the next one.
Heck yeah, man. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Oh, I had that last question for you. It was I think we might have covered it. What are your thoughts on the importance of having control over your wealth and using it for your vision? Did you get a chance to answer that entirely? Because I know you had some more
I
thoughts on.
think we hit it here and there. Yeah, most I mean, I think we said this already, but you know, Phil Town says this, when you put your money somewhere, you're voting towards a certain kind of a future, whatever it is. And so if you're if you don't have any control over, if you put all your money away in something that you don't control the decisions made there, then even if you had a vision, it's not being accomplished. So yeah, no, I think that it's super important to control. Obviously, you can't control everything, but as far as owning a business, it's cool being able to know like our efforts are going towards something that our values align with,
Right, right.
and
Exactly.
that's part of, and the vision is there. So, and it's also really fulfilling. And just side note, even kind of what you said about the church, people do things for in serving, not because it's paying them, but because they believe in the vision.
Right.
And it's kind of cool, like even seeing how, when Stephanie and I do things for lawn care launch, it's like we believe in this.
Exactly.
It's not like it's not a paycheck. It's we believe in the values that are going to be accomplished here. And because of that vision, we're controlling the wealth and everything. It all kind of works. So yeah,
Right.
have the vision. If anybody out there doesn't have vision, call Joey and and
Whatever.
get it squared away, because it's so, or yeah, talk to somebody who can, like, or a pastor or somebody, like, get vision. Because if you don't know where you're going, then the wealth doesn't mean anything and you can't control it. And yeah,
Yep. Yep.
so
All right, man. Well, I got to wrap it
my
up here.
point.
It's 5 o'clock. Give your YouTube shout out, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, so you guys, I do personal and professional development from a Christian perspective. So if you type in YouTube in the search bar at Michael Lane Thompson, just all one word, it'll come up, and hope you can get some helpful information there. I do book reviews and time management. Actually, Stephanie and I put out a video on how we plan to work in 2026 and basically manage our time well as a married couple. So if that interests you, jump on and watch it. And I post videos every 2 weeks and shorts all the time. So hope that's value to you.
Sweet, man. Thanks for coming on. We'll see you in the near future.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joey. We'll see you.
Yeah, man. Later.